I invite you to listen to the story of the day the intern spilled coffee on me and loudly proclaimed her husband was the CEO of this hospital. I calmly called my husband. "You should come down here and see this. Your new wife is throwing coffee on me." The massive Boeing 787 touched down heavily on the runway at JFK International Airport. After more than 12 hours of continuous flight from Frankfurt, that's Frankfurt, the roar of the engines gradually subsided, returning a quiet stillness to the business class cabin. I closed the book I'd been reading, smoothed the creases on my trousers, and pulled my carry-on from the overhead compartment as I walked out the jet bridge. The humid, bustling air of a New York summer hit me in the face, carrying the familiar, gritty scent of the city, a smell that, for anyone who's been away, feels strangely like coming home. My name is Catherine Hayes, and I am 32 years old. To the outside world, I am the woman who has it all. The sole heiress of the late chairman of the Apex Medical Group, holding a 60%, that's 60%, controlling stake, and the ultimate decision-making power in one of the largest private hospital systems in the United States. But the world doesn't see the crushing weight of that glittering title. Since my father's sudden passing from a severe illness, my shoulders have borne the weight of his colossal legacy. I've had to navigate a boardroom of cunning, old money shareholders, while trying to maintain a semblance of a happy family life. This business trip to Germany had lasted exactly 1 month. I had to personally visit factory after factory to negotiate the acquisition of a fleet of state-of-the-art medical equipment for our flagship hospital. This was a responsibility that should have fallen to my husband, Mark Thompson, the man currently occupying the CEO's chair. But I knew his capabilities all too well. Mark was handsome, charismatic, and a master of networking and charming people. But when it came to the technical details, or battling it out in negotiations in English, let alone German, he was completely out of his depth. Out of love for my husband, and a desire to solidify his position before a demanding board of directors, I had agreed to step into the background. My official title was Chief Strategy Officer, but in reality, I was the one clearing the path, handling every major and minor detail so he could shine. A sleek black town car was waiting for me at the VIP arrivals terminal. It glided smoothly over the Whitestone Bridge, heading towards the heart of Manhattan. I didn't want to go home just yet. I wanted to report the results of my trip to the board, and more importantly, I wanted to see for myself how my husband had been running the hospital during my month-long absence. Apex University Hospital rose majestically from a prime piece of real estate on the Upper East Side. The 20-story modern marvel of blue-tinted glass reflected the brilliant afternoon sun, the culmination of my father's life's work. Looking at the polished sign, with its stylized cross logo, a wave of pride washed over me, mingled with a vague, inexplicable anxiety. I told the driver to drop me at the main entrance, deciding to pull my own suitcase through the lobby instead of using the private executive entrance. I wanted to see the hospital's daily operations through the eyes of an ordinary visitor, to hear the authentic sounds of this place, not the polished versions presented in glossy boardroom reports. The main lobby was teeming with people. The automated chime of a PA system called out patient numbers. Families murmured anxiously to one another. The hurried footsteps of doctors and nurses created the unique, chaotic symphony of a busy hospital. The faint, clean scent of antiseptic hung in the cool, centrally conditioned air. I stood in a quiet corner near the reception desk, adjusting the lapels of my white pantsuit, planning to observe for a moment before heading up to Mark's office on the 5th floor, to surprise him. But my eyes were frozen by a scene unfolding in the center of the lobby, where the main corridors intersected. A tall man in white scrubs was kneeling on the cold marble floor. It was Dr. David Chen, head of cardiology, my old friend from medical school, and the hospital's most indispensable clinical asset. He was performing CPR on a middle-aged man who had just collapsed from a hypoglycemic attack. Sweat beaded on David's broad forehead, running down his strong nose and dripping onto the floor. His movements were swift, practiced, yet filled with a gentle, focused care. Give him some space. Let the man breathe. David's deep, authoritative voice echoed through the lobby. Nurse, I need a glucose meter, and a glass of warm sugar water now. I stood there watching him in silence. David hadn't changed in 15 years. He was the man who had spent his youth quietly looking out for me. A brilliant talent who never cared for fame or fortune. The day my father died, it was David who stood vigil by the casket for 3 days and nights, arranging everything perfectly, while Mark was busy entertaining foreign dignitaries. Watching the way he cradled the patient's head, his focus so intense he was oblivious to the world around him, I felt a profound sense of admiration. That was the image of a true healer, a soul shining brightly in a world often clouded by money and ambition. But this beautiful portrait of medical ethics was instantly defiled by a splash of black ink. Just a few yards from where David was saving a life, near the constantly spinning revolving doors, a very young woman stood with her hands on her hips, her shrill voice tearing through the hospital's solemn atmosphere. Hey, what is wrong with you? I told you to park my Mercedes in the shade. Why is it sitting out there in the sun? Do you have any idea how hot black leather seats get? You're going to ruin my designer purse. She was a girl of about 22. Her face caked in heavy makeup. Her lips painted a garish shade of red. She wore a hot pink bodycon dress, so short and tight it was grossly inappropriate for a medical setting, revealing a stretch of skin that was more jarring than attractive. Pinned to her chest was a blue intern's badge that read, Tiffany Henry. The elderly valet, a Vietnam veteran who had worked here since my father's time, his hair now white as snow, was bowing his head, flustered by the condescending attitude of a girl young enough to be his granddaughter. I'm so sorry, miss, Henry stammered. It's been so busy with cars coming and going. I haven't had a chance yet. I'll move it for you right now. Tiffany didn't even bother to listen. She stomped her foot on the marble floor. Well, hurry it up. You move like a turtle. How does someone like you even get a job at a 5-star hospital like this? You've completely ruined my morning. Having finished berating the older man, Tiffany immediately pulled the latest iPhone from her designer handbag, switched to the front-facing camera, and her entire demeanor shifted in a flash. Her scowl transformed into a bright, sickeningly sweet smile as she began chattering into the screen. Hi, everyone. Good morning to all my amazing followers. Your girl Tiff had a little drama with some incompetent staff this morning, but whatever. For the greater good of public health, I have to stay positive and cute. Show me some love, guys. Tap that heart and share my live stream. I glanced at my watch. It was 9:15 a.m. An employee, more than an hour late for her shift, dressed in violation of the code of conduct, was now standing in the main lobby, yelling at an elderly colleague and live-streaming her personal drama during work hours. The blood began to rush to my face, a vein throbbing in my temple. Was this the professional standard Mark had sworn to me he would uphold? Was this the face of the culture my father and I had worked so tirelessly to build? The stark contrast between the two scenes, David on his knees, his shirt soaked with sweat as he saved a life, and this vapid intern putting on a ridiculous show for social media, made it impossible for me to remain a silent observer. I clenched the handle of my suitcase, took a deep, steadying breath to regain the composure of a leader, and took decisive steps toward the entrance. I walked over to Henry and gently placed a hand on his shoulder to reassure him. He flinched, then looked up, his age-worn eyes widening in recognition. He was about to greet me as chairwoman, but I quickly put a finger to my lips, signaling for him to remain silent. I didn't want my identity revealed just yet. I wanted to see how this little drama would play out. I turned to the girl, Tiffany, who was still absorbed in pouting and posing for her phone. "Excuse me," I said, my voice quiet, but firm and authoritative. This is a hospital, a place of healing, not a fashion show or a marketplace for you to be shouting at your elders. Furthermore, the workday begins at 8 a.m. It is now 9 a.m. You are late, and you are causing a public disturbance. Interrupted from her narcissistic reverie of virtual hearts and compliments, Tiffany looked visibly annoyed. She lowered her phone, her eyes narrowing as she scanned me from head to toe with a dismissive air. I was wearing a simple, elegant white pantsuit with minimal jewelry. After a 12-hour flight, my face was tired and pale with little makeup. In the eyes of this flashy young woman, I was probably just some frumpy patient's relative, or some uptight middle-aged Karen. "And who are you to stick your nose in my business?" Tiffany sneered, her tone dripping with contempt. "I'm reprimanding my employee. If you've got nothing better to do, go find a seat somewhere else and stop bothering me. I'm trying to engage with my fans." With that, she raised her phone again, crudely shoving the camera in my face. Her voice became high-pitched and grating. "Look at this, everyone. My day is already ruined by some bitter old hag. Probably got dumped by her husband. Her life's a mess, so she comes out here to start trouble. Poor little Tiffany, getting bullied, even at work." The girl's insolence and audacity were beyond anything I could have imagined. My initial plan was a simple reprimand before heading to my office and having HR deal with her. But this level of disrespect could not be tolerated. "Put the phone down." "Now," I said, my voice low and menacing, my eyes locked on hers. "I am asking you to respect the hospital's regulations and the dignity of others. If you continue to film without permission and insult people, I will have security escort you out and file a formal complaint." "Ooh, are you threatening me?" Tiffany's eyes widened, her heavily made-up face twisting into a sneer. Suddenly, she did something I never would have anticipated, holding a large, half-finished iced coffee. She pretended to turn awkwardly, but in reality, she deliberately slammed into me. The entire cup of cold, dark liquid drenched my pristine white pantsuit. The coffee spread quickly, soaking through the fabric and dripping onto the floor, forming a dark puddle at my feet. The sticky, chilling sensation made me shudder. The strong smell of coffee filled my nostrils. This suit had been a gift from my father on his last birthday. Now it was stained by this petty, calculated act. Before I could even react, Tiffany burst into a theatrical wail. Her fake sobs echoed through the lobby, drowning out the PA system and drawing the attention of everyone around. "Oh my God, what did you do? Can't you watch where you're going? You pushed me! You ruined my beautiful dress!" She sobbed hysterically while simultaneously glancing at her phone's live stream, her performance worthy of an Oscar. Crocodile tears streamed down her cheeks. "Everyone, you're all my witnesses. This woman, some crazy patient's relative, just assaulted a healthcare worker. That's me. My baby gave me this dress. It's custom made. It costs like $2,000. It's ruined. How am I ever going to get this stain out?" A murmur went through the crowd. People who hadn't seen what happened looked at me with expressions of disapproval and pity. Some even took out their own phones to record the chaos. Seeing she had the audience's attention, Tiffany pressed her advantage. She stepped closer to me, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper only I could hear. "You'd better apologize to me right now, and pay for this dress. Do you have any idea who my husband is? My husband is Mark Thompson, the CEO of this entire hospital. He has the power to hire and fire anyone here. You mess with me, and you'll find yourself and your entire family blacklisted. No doctor in this city will ever treat you again." Hearing Mark's name come from the mouth of this brazen, vulgar girl felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My husband, CEO Mark Thompson, the man I had trusted implicitly, the man for whom I had sacrificed my own career to support. Since when did he have a young, arrogant mistress flaunting her power right here in this sacred workplace? I looked at the coffee stains spreading across my suit, then back up at Tiffany's triumphant face. Instead of exploding with rage, I suddenly felt an urge to laugh. A bitter, hollow laugh. I calmly took a handkerchief from my purse, wiped the sticky liquid from my hand, and then raised my head, my gaze as sharp as a scalpel. You said your husband is CEO Mark Thompson? That's right. Scared now, aren't you? Tiffany smirked. Get on your knees and polish my shoes, and maybe I'll ask him to forgive your little outburst. Before I could reply, a tall figure stepped between us, forming a solid wall. That broad, familiar back belonged to David. He had just finished with the emergency patient, and the faint scent of antiseptic still clung to his scrubs. He stood there, a mountain of quiet authority. He didn't need to shout. The calm, dignified presence of a seasoned physician and department head was enough to quiet the noisy crowd. Even the gawkers silently lowered their phones. He glanced at the coffee stain on my white suit, a flicker of pain and suppressed anger in his eyes. Then he turned to Tiffany, his gaze turning icy and sharp enough to make her flinch. "Miss Jones," David said, his voice low and firm, each word enunciated clearly. "Why are you causing a disturbance in the main lobby?" Seeing David, Tiffany was momentarily flustered, but she quickly regained her arrogance, banking on her connection to the CEO. After all, David was just a department head, an employee. Her man was the one in charge. "Dr. Chen, you saw what happened. This woman pushed me, spilled coffee all over the designer dress Mark gave me. I'm live streaming to expose these rude, violent people to the public so everyone can see what kind of trash comes here." David didn't even glance at her phone. He calmly pointed to the large plaque of hospital regulations hanging on the wall. "Please read aloud for me. Rule number 1, respect all patients and their families. Rule number 3, attire must be professional and adhere to hospital dress code. Rule number 5, personal business and activities causing a disturbance are prohibited during work hours. Now look at yourself, and tell me how many of those rules you have broken." Tiffany was speechless, her face flushing with anger. She stammered for a moment before retorting. "I'm a special case," Mark said. "I could wear what I want, to be creative. You're just a hired doctor. What right do you have to lecture me? I'm going to tell Mark to fire you right now." Standing behind David, I heard her words and felt the full, bitter irony of the situation. So, this was how Mark had been indulging his mistress behind my back, allowing her to run wild as if she owned the place. A lowly intern dared to call the head of cardiology a hired doctor and use the CEO as a shield for her own appalling behavior. David let out a short, humorless laugh, a rare expression on his usually serious face. "A hired doctor. You're right. But I was hired for my skills, for my integrity, and for my knowledge to save lives. And you? What are you doing here? You are cheapening the sacred profession of medicine, tarnishing the reputation of this hospital, all for a few virtual likes and hollow compliments online." He took another step toward her, his imposing presence forcing her to back away instinctively. "You claim to be CEO Mark Thompson's fiancé. Let me tell you a truth. A woman with an ounce of self-respect and class would never stand in a public place and brag about such a sordid affair. And she certainly would never behave so rudely to an elder like Henry." David's words were like needles piercing Tiffany's fragile ego. Her face burned with shame and rage. The crowd's opinion began to shift. The whispers were now aimed squarely at the scantily clad young woman. "The doctor's right. She's got no class. Look at how she's dressed. Total gold digger. That poor lady in the white suit just got coffee thrown on her for no reason. You can tell she's a decent person." Finding herself isolated, Tiffany resorted to her final trick, playing the victim. She shrieked into her phone, tears streaming down her face. "Everyone, they're ganging up on me. The doctors here protect each other and bully the weak. I'm all alone. Mark, baby, where are you? Come save your wife. They're going to kill me." David turned back to me, his expression softening, his eyes filled with years of unspoken concern. "Catherine," he asked quietly, "are you really okay? Did the coffee burn you?" I shook my head, managing a small smile to reassure him, though a storm was raging inside me. "I'm fine, David. Thank you for standing up for me." He was about to say something else, probably to call security, but I gently placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. "Don't dirty your hands," I whispered. "This is a family matter. Let me handle it. I want to see exactly who my model husband chooses to defend in this situation." I looked directly at Tiffany, who was still screaming Mark's name. "Fine. You want to call Mark? I'll help you. Let's see how this little play ends." I calmly pulled my phone from my purse. The screen showed 10:15 a.m. According to the detailed schedule my executive assistant had sent me, Mark was in a critically important meeting with a delegation from the Department of Health and key investors from Singapore in the VIP conference room on the 5th floor. He was obsessed with his public image, always wanting to appear as a visionary, principled leader. I scrolled through my contacts to the name, my love, a name that once brought me warmth, but now made my stomach churn. I pressed the call button. It rang for a long time. He was probably in the middle of some grand speech about medical ethics and strategic vision, things he had parroted from me and my father. Finally, he answered. Mark's voice was a hurried whisper, but he still tried to maintain his usual fake tenderness. "Honey, it's me. I'm in a huge meeting with the department and our partners. It's really intense. Did you land okay? Why didn't you tell me? I would have picked you up." I didn't answer his hollow questions. I calmly switched the call to speakerphone, turning the volume to maximum. The lobby fell silent, everyone straining to listen, including Tiffany, who had stopped her wailing. "You're in a meeting?" I asked. My voice is cold and sharp as a winter wind. "A very important one." "Honey, I can't get away. Why don't you go home and rest? Take a bath. Get some sleep. I'll be home early tonight to make it up to you. I promise." Mark continued his act as the caring husband. I cut him off sharply. "You don't need to come home. You need to come down to the main lobby right now." "What? The lobby? For what?" "Honey, I told you I'm extremely busy." "I said get down here immediately," I yelled, my fainted composure finally shattering. All the pent-up anger and betrayal exploded. "Come down here and see your new wife throwing coffee on me, see her insulting Dr. Chen, and threatening to have me thrown out of the hospital my father built." The other end of the line went dead silent. A chilling silence. I could picture Mark's face drained of all color. He must have been so flustered that he accidentally hit his own speakerphone button. Or perhaps the VIP conference room was so quiet that my furious voice had been audible to every official and investor in the room. The sound of a chair scraping loudly came through the phone, followed by Mark's stuttering, incoherent voice. "Catherine, what are you talking about? You're at the hospital. What new wife? Calm down." At the same time, Tiffany, standing opposite me, began to turn pale. She recognized the voice on the phone. It was definitely her Mark, the man who whispered sweet nothings to her every night. But why was this powerful man speaking to this frumpy old woman with such fear and submission? Why did he call her honey? "You have 5 minutes," I said. Each word a death sentence. "If you are not in this lobby in 5 minutes, I will have my lawyer, Mr. Vance, bring all the necessary paperwork directly to your conference room to discuss this matter with you and your partners." I hung up, giving him no chance to respond. The hospital lobby was eerily quiet. The only sound, the hum of the air conditioning. All eyes were on me, the woman in the coffee-stained suit, who radiated an unassailable authority, the aura of the true person in charge. David stood beside me, his arms crossed, a look of grim satisfaction and trust on his face. He knew the real drama was just beginning. Tiffany was trembling, the phone nearly slipping from her grasp. She stared at me in utter disbelief, her red lips quivering. Who are you?" I looked at her and smiled, a smile that was both gentle and terrifyingly cold. "Why did you stop your live stream? Keep it rolling. Let's let everyone see how your husband deals with his legal wife." Those 5 minutes were the longest of Mark Thompson's life, and the final moments of Tiffany's power-hungry delusion. I stood there, my back straight, waiting for the storm I was about to unleash upon the betrayers. The atmosphere in the lobby was thick enough to cut with a knife. The crowd of onlookers, from patients to nurses, instinctively parted, forming a large circle in the middle of the floor, like a miniature coliseum. At its center stood me, David, and Tiffany. Tiffany still hadn't recovered from the phone call. She'd lowered her phone, no longer daring to point it at me, though her thumb was still secretly on the record button. A tiny sliver of hope must have remained in her shallow, calculating mind. She hoped I was just some powerful business associate of Mark's, or at worst, the boring stay-at-home wife he always complained about. She still believed in her youthful beauty, and the sweet lies Mark whispered to her at night. "Don't you dare try to scare me," Tiffany stammered, trying to regain some courage, though her voice trembled. "Mark loves me. He told me, even if you are his wife, it's just a title. Every man gets tired of his old wife and wants something new and exciting, and I'm very exciting." I didn't respond to her cheap provocation. I took out my phone and sent a short text to Arthur Vance, my most trusted legal counsel. "Arthur, bring file A to the main lobby. Immediately, it's time." Arthur replied instantly. "Understood, Madam Chairwoman. I'm in the elevator." David moved closer to me, his solid frame shielding me from the curious stares and phone cameras of the crowd. "Are you sure you want to do this here, Catherine?" he whispered. "It could damage the hospital's reputation." I looked up at him, my gaze unwavering. "A tumor has to be cut out at the root, David. It will hurt once, but then it can heal. If I try to preserve some fake sense of decorum, the hospital my father poured his heart into will be destroyed by them. Reputation is built on integrity and transparency, not on lies and cover-ups." David nodded, his eyes showing complete agreement. "I understand. I'm with you no matter what happens." His simple words were a small flame warming my frozen heart. For 15 years, he had always been there, quiet and constant. Meanwhile, on Tiffany's livestream, the comments were flying, but the tide had turned completely. "Oh my God, who is that lady? She sounds like a boss. Looks like the real wife just showed up. This intern is about to get wrecked. This is going to be good." Tiffany glanced at the comments, her face growing paler, but she still tried to argue with the air. "Don't believe her, guys. She's just a good actress. Just wait until Mark gets here. He'll throw her out on the street." The sound of an elevator dinging cut through the tension. The doors of the private executive elevator slid open. All eyes turned in that direction. Mark burst out like a whirlwind, his expensive suit disheveled, his tie askew, his forehead slick with sweat. He was breathing heavily, like he'd just run a marathon, completely stripped of his usual polished demeanor. He saw the chaotic scene and his eyes darted around frantically. They landed on Tiffany, who was standing there with a look of wounded pride. He froze for a second, but then his gaze met mine. I was standing with my arms crossed, looking at him as if he were a strange insect. And next to me stood David, regarding him with unconcealed disdain. Mark knew his reign was over. Seeing Mark, Tiffany latched onto him like a drowning person, grabbing a piece of driftwood. She threw herself at him, shedding all her fake pride, clinging to his arm and whining. "Honey, you're here. Look, this crazy and that loser David were bullying me. She threw coffee on me and threatened to fire me, call security, and get them out of here." Mark stood frozen, his arm rigid in her grasp. He stared at me, his lips moving, but no words coming out. Fear was etched on his face. He knew better than anyone that the woman before him was not just his wife. She was the chairwoman, the one who held his fate, his CEO title, and all the wealth he enjoyed in the palm of her hand. "Mark," I prompted, my lips curling into a smile that made him shudder. "What's the matter, CEO Thompson? Your beloved is crying for justice. Aren't you going to do something? Tiffany, sensing Mark's strange hesitation, shook his arm. What's wrong with you? Say something. Everyone is watching. You have to show them who's in charge. Mark turned to look at Tiffany. The look in his eyes was no longer the adoration of a lover, but pure, unadulterated hatred. He realized that this stupid, arrogant girl had just lit the fuse on the bomb that would obliterate his career. And then it happened. Smack. A sharp, explosive sound echoed through the lobby. Mark swung his arm and delivered a vicious slap across Tiffany's face. The force of the blow sent her staggering backward, tripping and falling hard onto the marble floor. The phone flew from her hand, skittering across the tile, its live stream still running. Tiffany clutched her cheek where the red imprint of 5 fingers was already forming. She looked up at Mark, her eyes wide with disbelief. She couldn't understand what was happening. The man who just last night had sworn his undying love and promised to buy her a house and a car was now striking her in front of hundreds of people. "Shut your mouth!" Mark screamed, his voice cracking with fear and rage. "What the hell are you talking about? Calling yourself my wife? I don't know you. You're crazy. Stop spreading these lies." The entire lobby gasped. The reversal was shocking, brutal, and utterly pathetic. Mark turned back to me, his aggressive demeanor vanishing instantly, replaced by a graveling, desperate expression. He clasped his hands together, his voice shaking. "Catherine, honey, please, let me explain. I honestly have no idea who she is. She must be some obsessed fan, or some delusional person trying to get attention. Please, you have to believe me. You're my only wife." I watched his pathetic performance with a rising wave of nausea. A man who refused to take responsibility for his actions, who would throw his mistress under the bus without a second thought to save himself. On the floor, after a moment of shock, Tiffany snapped. The physical pain was nothing compared to the public humiliation. She realized she had been betrayed, discarded like a used toy. Her aggressive nature took over. She shrieked, throwing all caution to the wind. "Mark Thompson, you dare hit me? You don't know me? Then who was it in my bed at the Mandarin Oriental last night? Who signed the papers for the condo in Hudson Yards in my name? You've been sleeping with me for months, and now that your rich wife is here, you pretend you don't know me." Her accusations were like a bucket of ice water thrown in Mark's face. All his denials were now meaningless. The phone on the floor was capturing every word, every image, and broadcasting it across the internet. "You shut up right now." Mark lunged toward Tiffany to silence her, but David was faster. He stepped forward, grabbing Mark by the shoulder and pushing him back. The strength of a surgeon who keeps himself in shape easily overpowered a man softened by years of lavish dinners and affairs. "That's enough," David said coldly. "Stop making a fool of yourself. You are disgracing this institution." I walked slowly towards Mark. The clicking of my heels on the marble floor sounded like a judge's gavel. I looked him straight in the eye. All traces of affection gone. "You said you don't know her?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Then why does she have keycard access to your office? And why did her bank account receive a $2 million transfer from your secret offshore account last month?" Mark's eyes widened in horror. He never imagined I knew about that $2 million, the money he had embezzled from the new MRI machine procurement project. He thought he had hidden it so well through a series of shell corporations. "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about that," Mark stammered, still trying to lie. Just then, Arthur Vance emerged from the crowd, a thick file in his hands. He walked to my side, bowed his head respectfully, and handed me the folder. "Madam Chairwoman, here are the complete bank statements, the purchase contract for the condo in Miss Tiffany Jones's name, and the security footage from the Mandarin Oriental for the past 3 months, all legally obtained." I took the file and threw it at Mark's feet. The white pages scattered across the floor, exposing the naked truth for all to see. "Read it," I commanded. "Read it, and see exactly what you've been doing behind my back." Mark stared at the scattered papers, his face ashen. He knew he was defeated. He trembled and collapsed to his knees, grabbing the hem of my pantsuit, begging, "Catherine, honey, I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. Please, for the sake of our 10 years of marriage, forgive me. Just this once. I swear I'll break up with her. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave. Just please forgive me." The sight of the hospital CEO on his knees, crying and begging his wife, sent another wave of shock through the lobby. Oh my God, so she really is the chairwoman. The chairwoman went undercover. This is better than a movie. Serves him right. Cheating, embezzling piece of trash. Tiffany sat in a daze in the corner, watching the man who had been her ticket to a lavish life groveling pathetically. She understood that her dream of being a CEO's wife had shattered into a million pieces. Not only that, she was now facing legal trouble for receiving stolen funds. I looked down at the man kneeling at my feet without a shred of pity. "Our 10 years of marriage," I scoffed. "When you were stealing money meant to save lives to buy your mistress a condo, did you think of our marriage? When you let her insult me and my employees, did you think of our marriage?" I pulled my leg away from his grasp and turned to face the crowd of employees. In a loud, clear voice, I made my declaration. "I am Catherine Hayes, chairwoman of the board for the Apex Medical Group. I am announcing that effective immediately, Mr. Mark Thompson is officially terminated from his position as CEO for gross ethical violations and suspicion of felony embezzlement. All decisions made by him from this moment forward are null and void." My announcement was like a sledgehammer, shattering the last vestiges of Mark Thompson's dignity. The lobby erupted in a chorus of murmurs that quickly grew into open discussion. I saw looks of triumph in the eyes of the nurses and staff whom Mark had bullied. I saw relief on the faces of the honest doctors. However, Mark wasn't ready to surrender. The survival instincts of a cornered rat kicked in. He lifted his tear-ked face, but his eyes held a familiar, cunning glint. He struggled to his feet, trying to brush the dust from his knees and reclaim some of his former authority. "Catherine, you can't do this to me!" Mark shrieked, his voice laced with a false sense of victimhood. "You can't just use some unverified bank statements to accuse me of embezzlement. That $2 million was an investment for the new hospital wing project. The paperwork just hasn't been finalized yet. You're misunderstanding everything." He turned to the crowd, raising his hands as if taking an oath. "Everyone, listen to me. I am CEO Mark Thompson. I have dedicated the last 5 years of my life to this hospital. I would never do anything to harm it. This is a conspiracy, a blatant frame-up." I watched his clumsy performance in silence. An investment in a new wing. A pathetic excuse he'd concocted on the spot. Did he really think he could fool me and the law by blaming paperwork? I didn't need to say a word. Someone else stepped forward from the crowd, armed with a truth sharper than any accusation. "An investment in the new wing." David's calm, steely voice cut through the air. He walked forward, holding a tablet displaying real-time inventory data. He stood opposite Mark, a head taller, his presence completely overwhelming. He held up the tablet for everyone to see. "Mr. Thompson, you claim you are investing in a new wing, but our asset management system tells a very different story. 2 weeks ago, you signed off on the purchase of 10 top-of-the-line ventilators and a new generation MRI system. This was at the exact time the chairwoman was in Germany negotiating those very deals. The total contract value was $2 million. How do you explain that?" Mark sputtered, sweat pouring down his face. "The shipment is on its way. There are complications with customs. What do you know about international logistics?" David gave a cold, contemptuous smile. He swiped his finger across the screen, displaying an email. "I may not be an expert in customs, but I can read. This is a confirmation email from our German supplier, which they sent to me this morning. They confirm they have never received any payment from Apex for this order. And of course, no equipment has left their warehouse. Another collective gasp went through the lobby. David's evidence was irrefutable. He pressed on, his words like a surgeon's precise cuts, stripping away Mark's lies. You claimed the equipment was on its way, yet our warehouse is empty. You used the excuse of needing an urgent down payment to secure the order, embezzled the funds, and transferred them to a shell company, while Miss Jones here was suddenly able to purchase a luxury condo for that exact amount. Did you really think the chairwoman wouldn't find out? Mark was speechless, stumbling backward, his body trembling. He never imagined David would be so well informed. He had always seen David as a bookish nerd, obsessed with medicine and surgery, not someone who would be tracking his financial misdeeds. I looked at David with a new level of admiration. It turned out that while I was away, he had not only excelled at his medical duties, but had also been silently protecting my family's legacy. He had gathered all this evidence, waiting for my return to help me excise the cancer in our organization. David turned to me, his gaze firm. Madam Chairwoman, as the head of cardiology and a member of the medical board, I can confirm that the lack of this equipment has already negatively impacted patient care. Mr. Thompson Z.